Hello, it is, was it Monday, March 15th, 2021. And so Laura and I are going to be going over some of the workflow for the Slippers UI design system repository and like what it looks like to update that, push it up to NPM, change anything that has to happen downstream in about.gitlab.com. So I'm going to share my screen. Share my screen, desktop 2. And share. Cool. Awesome. So first thing is first here. Oops. Let me. This is actually the npm package, but we want to take a look at this first. Laura, you renamed breadcrumbs to tags, right? So you recently merged in this merge request.
Yes.
Here, so we can see it here. That stuff is all up in the master branch. And so like typically part of this workflow would be like doing that work first. Like I need to make a change, like doing the change work and verifying it, right? So what I'll do here just to kind of demonstrate without like actually doing work that is already redoing work. So I'm in my terminal here. I'm in my Slippers repository. I'm going to pull the latest. Cool. I'm going to do yarn start. That'll start up the storybook. And so like what you could do, and you could actually even do this in the browser too, or like from the storybook that is attached to our GitLab pages, right? So like if it's made it up into master, it's now up in design system. And so I think we should see this here too. What were these called? Oops, sorry, that's my storybook going. Tags, right? So these used to be, I had named them breadcrumbs erroneously. So you can see they're here. And you can also see they're still like rendering here in sort of like the templates and stuff. And I'm like hand waving this because that's not the point of the video, but typically you would like make your changes and like first verify your changes are good, you know, get the review. The other thing though, and like the reason that storybook is good, like here's why all of this, because we're going to go through this process and there's a reasonable question of like, why do all this song and dance? The reason is that storybook gives us like a very clear, like, place to test our changes in the design system against other stuff. So I hand waved before, but like tags are like the component or like the molecule, right? We have these different iterations. You know, this would go down to 2 rows. If I go to the Figma mobile view, right? All that stuff. And so not only though, like looking at the component, but being like, okay, like I know that I have these tags and I know they also appear in the blog template. So like now I can go see this without having to go through like about.gitlab.com and be like, what page is this used on, right? You can see like it's in this template. So now I can verify not only do my changes look good in isolation, but they also look good like when we bring them together in the templates. That's why all this is, that's why we're doing this. So we verified, this is my local copy as well, but it should be the same because it's master. So you've done all your work, you've verified, you've made your merge request, and you've merged it all in. And then now you want to like make it available for use elsewhere. So we have a couple things to do here. The first is, so if you go to, I think we've got this in our README. If we do, yeah, we do. There's some steps about like instructions about yarn build. About like how to build the library and build Storybook. You can also check in the package JSON, look at our scripts and see like specifically what each one does. So the first thing to do is you're like, okay, cool, I'm really happy with everything. So you build it, and it's just yarn build. Yarn build will do the production build of the Vue library. It will also do the production build of the Tailwind like CSS generated output, and it'll bundle it all together, right? And so you can see in my right-hand terminal down here, these are the files it created, and it like deleted the other ones. And you see there's really just changes to our CSS, which is probably the changes in the class name around here, right? So, oh, that's an error. No, okay, those aren't my changes. But run build, you can see what actually changed. Again, if everything's been reviewed, you should be you're in good shape here. So you run the build step, and then here's how we publish it. Again, in the package.json, here's the version. We're on 070. I released this last Wednesday, which was the end of last iteration. And so now all we have to do is increment. So we increment in the current state we're in, because we're in V0 and nothing is stable. We increment the minor version at the end of each iteration. So like right now it's Monday. We just started this iteration. No one should be bumping this to 8, right? There's no reason to do that. That's just time. There's nothing about the changes you make that will ever bump it to 8. It literally is just end of each iteration. We just get a clean slate on the next minor version.
Gotcha.
The patch versions, what is usually a patch version, is what we use for like changes during the iteration. So since it's Monday and we're not releasing 08, I'll release 071. Right. And so that's because like we're making this change. This should go out so we can use it inside the iteration, but like we don't need to increment the minor version. Right. The other thing we could do if you wanted to test it is you could use alpha tags. So and this is documented in Stories releases. If you go to Stories releases, there's stuff about versioning and like how and why. There's links to semantic versioning. But basically, like if this wasn't merged into master, if it hadn't yet been approved, but you wanted to use it elsewhere, you could use the alpha tag to release it to NPM. And that denotes that not only is it unstable version 0, it's unstable version 0 and an alpha pre-release of some work you're probably doing inside of an iteration. And people should like, unless they really mean to go review your work, they should not be like following the alpha, the beta, like, anyway, and you can increment alphas .1, I think it is. So like you can also like, you can build and build and build. I think I got up to like an alpha .4 last week. So like, this is how you kind of like continuously like build and like continuously release stuff. Mm-hmm.
If someone is like pinning to the latest version of this, will it use the alpha version?
I don't think I'd actually have to check how NPM behaves. I don't think that it'll do pre-releases. I think it'll do every patch. And I would recommend that nobody pins to the latest version. We'll go over that. And again, this is like part of being on V0. We're on V0. No one should be consuming this. Like right now, I would only expect us to be consuming it. If other people are, I really hope that they do not like set it to pin to the latest version, because things will break frequently. Even for us, like we need and I'll show this step, but we should be very considerate about like when we do this and like when we increment and why. And I've set it to be hard coded to a specific version in the Middleman integration. Okay. But we have a variety of tools. Here's the other cool thing about this. Oh, here, let me even show you. So I'm on the master branch right now, right? This, like, you don't need to version control it, or like it doesn't matter. It sort of matters, but like it's not a huge deal if the version that you're working on like locally diverges from what's in your version control. So like right now I can push up this alpha. So I'll do npm publish access public. This is 1-alpha that I just pushed. I'm not going to commit this to our source control at all. I'm actually going to like git stash clear. So we're back here. That just released though. So if we go here, we'll probably see in the versions, and this is totally cool. Like I did that to demonstrate that, like, don't worry, like it's fine. It's somewhere, it'll go up, but like, it's cool if you don't version control that. The only things we do care about getting in version control, so we're all working off the same thing, are the patch and the minor version. But if you're doing alpha work, do it from your branch, like whatever. It's like these are two like parallel processes that should have some, like, they have some dependencies between one another, but they don't have to be exactly the same. And as we go forward, we'll also do some automation around this so that like people don't have to like make choices, but I don't know yet what the answers are for those choices. So I think it's good if we all just make choices for a little bit and like converge on what the best choice is for some of these automations, right? Cool. Yeah. So back to this. Last week I released 070. This is a change to 070, so I'm going to bump it to 071. And for now, and again, this is just like a choice that I'm making. We could do this differently and like set it up, but like I like to run the build step, and to remind everyone, we got here, everything was reviewed. I ran yarn build, which I could do infinitely many times here because it'll be the same output, whatever. Ran yarn build, bumped the version number, and I'm just on the master branch, and like I don't hate that for this right now, because eventually what'll probably happen is we'll have like a CI thing that like does those two things on its own, and like humans don't do it. So like it's cool that it's just like on master, like it doesn't need to be its own MR. And then like I do like git add -a, and like you'll see this. I like it. Build and bump is like what I call this commit. Like you'll probably see it a bunch of times. Yeah, exactly. This is the building and the bumping, and so I commit it, and I haven't run the linter, but I'm pretty sure we're fine because I haven't made changes. Yeah, we're fine. Cool. Okay. And I just push it. So this is now the most current master like has this version. The reason that it's like useful to do this is that like, so when I go to like make my next set of changes, and if when I pull it into master and say, oh, we're on 0.7.1, like I'll increment it to 0.7.2. The nice thing is you can't overwrite versions in NPM, or like if you can, you can't do it easily. So like if you made a mistake and like push to a version that like had already been released, NPM will just yell at you, I think.
Okay.
Which will be good. I'm not going to demo that because I don't know if that's actually what'll happen, but there are like there are some guardrails in place here. So again, we did the build, we did the bump, we pushed the changes to the repository. So the next time someone like pulls it or like tries to do the same thing, they'll see that like we are saying to the team right now in the repository, hey, we're on 0.7.1. Right, that's just an indicator to other people who pull this. And then I will do npm publish access public, which again in the right hand corner, we're going to write this down as part of the issue here, but I thought that the live video would be useful. I'll do that. This is the part we need to get people access. That's all. I think I can give you access. We'll have to see. You'll have to make an npm account, but you can just tie that to like your GitLab stuff. But as you'll see here, like it did whatever it has to do. It like compressed it all as a tarball. Here's the details, and then it like released this, and you can see like the version number 0.7.1, right? So that should be up there. Let's refresh the versions here. Interesting. I wonder what is taking so long. Okay. Well, I'll just show the next steps while we wait for that, and we may just run
I see it.
Oh, is it there? Okay.
I just refreshed it. Yeah. Yay. And the alpha
Cool.
one that you had done is also there. So.
I wonder if this is like weirdly cached. Yeah. This is so weird. I'm on Chrome Canary here, and I wonder if it's like just doing something weird and funky. Okay, cool. So it's there. Here, let me just do a new tab. Slippers UI npm. Oh, no, that's weird. I'm just like not getting it.
Okay. Yeah, I see 29 versions. Oh well.
Okay, cool. Well, I will trust you, and we'll see. And we'll see it work here shortly. So that was all in the Slippers repository. I have an alias in my command line that brings me to the GitLab location. So that's what I just did in both these terminals here. So I'm going to check out master. So here's what's next, right? The nice thing is on this one, we did not have those tags used anywhere at the moment. So there's nothing to do, but like things have changed, right? So like, Laura, you renamed these things, I believe, and like across a bunch of components. So if we had like, in fact, I don't know what's going on. This must be like my internet like is not loving me right now. So if we had, in fact, like had these in use, like in Middleman, anywhere where it showed up in Middleman, like, and this is like, in my opinion, this is like the responsibility of the person incrementing the version is like to then go and like make these changes. And I'll show you what I mean. So like, oh, I know why. It's because I'm pulling from master on www-gitlab-com, and it's just taking forever.
You fool.
Yeah. I'm just gonna stop that. And I'm gonna do the git checkout. I'm gonna call this. I'm just gonna spike it. Demo slippers upgrade. So here's all you got to do. So a short couple steps here. So this is the GitLab.com repo up in my left-hand corner. Package.json towards the bottom. I just Control F for slippers. Slippers UI, and you can see again, I have specified a very exact version, right?
Right.
So here, this was on master. I just checked out a new branch. So like a couple considerations. One, so if you made this change yourself and it like needs to go out like and affect about.gitlab.com, like I believe it is then like your responsibility to go do it because you know the changes you made. This is also should be a strong driver for us to like really practice like incremental changes in a big way, because what you don't want to do is like change a whole ton of stuff and release and like bump a patch version number that then makes you have to go and do a ton of reintegration work. Like this will like, this is the trade-off. Like there's overhead, and in many ways it is like unnecessary. Like we don't have to do it this way. There are simpler ways to do it, but those simpler ways like allow us to like take shortcuts that then like we end up 7 years down the road with a website that's very challenging to like understand. And so by doing this in a regimented way at the beginning, we make it really clear what depends on what. We literally have a dependency in our package manifest. And like when you do these small changes, so when I like increment this, right? So I increment this and like just do like yarn install. For now, while we're on version 0, I would recommend against doing yarn upgrade, because I think yarn upgrade will like do the like match this minor version or whatever. Like that's it's probably okay, but again, I really prefer personally to just like specify it in v0, because you should know, like you just incremented this thing, so you should know what version it is, right? And it really communicates to people who are working on this, hey, right now whatever's in master is like working off of this specific version of slippers. And because things are going to change very rapidly even between patch versions, like I just think we want to be extremely explicit here, is like my opinion. So we've updated it. I ran yarn install, so it'll like blow away the old package, and then add this. And then what I would do, like honestly, here's like the next. So this is like, it'll be different depending on what you changed, right? But like you changed the breadcrumbs. So like I would like literally just search for SLP breadcrumbs, and you'll see there's nothing in there because we haven't yet used them. But like I would just search the directory for all the instances of the thing that you changed and go like make it work, right? And they're like, okay, well now they're not breadcrumbs, they're labels, so they should look like this instead, right? Or like whatever the signature of the thing was is what it should look like, or is like what you should search for, and then change that as needed. And I think that like again, it's a little bit of a song and dance, but hopefully your changes are incremental enough that it's not a huge amount of work. If you find yourself staring down a huge amount of work, it's a really good yellow flag to say like, hey, hold up, can I do a smaller change? And if you can't, like, I still think this is a reasonable price to pay to be able to say like, look, like in my, like, and then when you go to make the MR for like, for this branch that you're in, you can say like bump version of slippers and update all of the places, like update the breadcrumbs to be tags. And so then people can see the diff. Not only can they say, hey, we changed the version, but we also know all of the affected files. And then the other, so we get a ton of really good stuff out of that, because if we get a bug report and someone's like, hey, the breadcrumbs or the tags are looking different, I don't know what's going on, or like this page is broken, we can say like, oh, cool, like we made a change to the name, we made a naming change in 071. And I can go back into the merge request history of about.gitlab.com, find where we incremented to 071 and find all the affected files, and then look for either what I missed or what I like overcorrected or whatever it is. So like that makes things really, like it really tightly couples stuff, but it also gives us this like, it's like, sorry, it's not couple, it's a little bit of coupling. It's like the cohesion coupling like balance, right, of software. And so it's like the other protection we get here though, is that if you really needed to, you could just decrement the version. You could like reset that. And that's why I think we should have these very specific versions in our package.json for now, because like things will change rapidly, and they will probably, like, as much as it'll be great if we can try to be incremental, like we'll probably miss the mark. And so we want to have the ability to say like, oh, like I'll just go back to what it was, which it was like, 0.6.1, like undo the changes, and then you'll just get the 0.61 version, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's the process. Again, it's a little bit of a song and a dance, but hopefully that like sort of boxes us into like good practices, and we will like a bunch of this will get automated as we do it a whole bunch. That is like that's like the final thing here too, is that like right now it's overhead. it's worthwhile. We're like we're like maybe a month into actually having like a like code repository for the design system. We're like 4 months into having a design system. So like I think it's okay that there's like some question marks still out there. Like we're gonna hit some turbulence, and that's like I think that's absolutely to be expected. But if we follow processes like these, or if at least we try or like think about them, then we have the tools to like move forward, move backwards, like be really explicit, and like just like protect ourselves against the challenges of like because like the challenges of doing this work fresh. The final thing that I'll say is like, the other thing we could do here is we could make like, and we talked about this, is like making the slippers repository a sub module, like a Git sub module of the main about.gitlab.com repo. But then like we couldn't just like move that forward or backwards in the same way, right?
Yeah.
And it would, like all the MRs would be tied to like other stuff in the repository, like if that changed, like, and we couldn't like I couldn't like check out a new branch. The cool thing here is like if I'm working on about.gitlab.com and I want to say like, oh, I wonder what like if I want to use your alpha branch, I can check out a branch on about.gitlab.com, bump my version to an alpha tag, use your work, right? Like your local work, if you've published it, or I can ask you like, hey, like whatever you're working on, can you like push an alpha release to it so I can see it and like help you like troubleshoot this thing on the integration? I can do that all separately in a branch. And then like, and I know very specifically like Laura and I were working on 085 alpha 2, and that's where I ran into this problem. But fortunately, we don't have to like revert any MRs in the main thing, because we never merge that into main, and like we have this all like semantically versioned. So that is like that's the power of this, and like that's why it's worth it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like you answered one of my questions by default, just that like, oh, I have a couple of MRs that are ready to be merged in. Can I just release them as one version? But it's better to do this like incrementally, make the changes in about.gitlab.com to make sure that everything works, and keep the Git history kind of sanitized.
yeah. And I mean, if they're related, like I don't think that's the worst. Like I did like I think I made you rebase a whole bunch because I merged. And so this is actually a really good illustration of like maybe why you shouldn't do all that at once. Because like what I did to you was I merged in like a dozen, like 13 components or something. And not only did I merge into components, but I merged it because we version control the build output. I like merged in the build output of all that change, which is just a ton. And then like you rebased, and it like took you a whole bunch of time to do. And like I also did that rebase because like I rebased myself locally, and it took me like 30 minutes to rebase, which is just like ugly, really hard. And so like yeah, like hopefully this like pushes us, hopefully like lessons like that push us towards like the smaller changes. But I think it's just a judgment call, and like if you've got 3 or 4 MRs, but it is really just like 10 lines of code different, like I don't know, they could be one version. We'll find a sweet spot, because like I don't think we need patch versions to equal like a 1 line of code change, right? Like that's probably too much overhead. I'm sure there's a sweet spot here somewhere. So cool. Awesome. Any other questions about that process? I'm going to write this down. We'll make an MR in slippers in the Storybook instance. But any other questions that we can answer in the video?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Thanks for walking through it.
Cool. Thank you for asking. Awesome. See ya.